Welcome to the Laverne Church of the Brethren's weekly audio message. Here at the Laverne Church of the Brethren, we create a Christian community called by Christ to be inclusive, caring, and peace-minded. We affirm that people of any race, ethnic identity, gender identity, sexual orientation, ability, age, economic status, faith tradition, or life situation are welcome in our congregation. We believe in compassionate service, stewardship of creation, respect for diversity, and nonviolent reconciliation for differences among all people, nations, and faith traditions. We claim no creed but the New Testament as exemplified by the life of Christ. We strive to follow the way of Jesus. And through these efforts, we seek to grow ever closer to the mind and heart of God. And now let us ground ourselves as we enter into today's message. We made it to church on this Easter Sunday. We managed to finish our Saturday preparations, lay out our clothes, and set our alarm clocks in order to be sure that we got to church on this sacred day. Some of us spent time trying to reason with our young children on the importance of teeth brushing before frantically buckling everyone into the car, hoping Easter might be the day we actually get to church on time. Others may have cooked a special breakfast or went on a sunrise walk with a pet. Others may have simply rolled out of bed to make it to church on time, and that's okay. All are welcome here, those in their Sunday's best and those with bedhead. Some of us are here despite the anger and tension we hold with religious institutions. We might have joined worship today because a family member pressured us, and we just wanted to appease them. Maybe we came here in search of the holy, in search of comfort. Maybe we came to celebrate. While our morning experiences may vary, and while we might have different reasons for attending church this day, here we are, together in this space. Growing up, my family did not attend church regularly, but we did attend on special occasions like Easter and Christmas. And I remember one particular Easter when we really dressed up. I think I was in 6th grade, and my parents let me pick out a new dress for Easter. And while times have surely changed, my 6th grade self was ecstatic to pick out a new dress. I chose a bright blue one with white daisies speckled throughout. I confidently wore that dress with a fancy white hat and matching chunky white clogs. My parents dressed up too. My dad wore a tie, and my siblings also dressing the part. And I remember we took a family photo that day in the front yard of our home, because nothing screams Easter like taking a photo while everyone is cleaned up at the same time. And after that photo, off to church we went. What brought us to church that day, and what brings us here to church this day? I think something happened over 2,000 years ago, something sacred, something momentous that has caused people to rise early to gather, to celebrate and worship on Easter. Now, what exactly happened on that first Easter morning is often debated. Some will say it was a story of the imagination. Some will say there was a literal resurrection of the body of Jesus. Some will say it was a resurrection of Jesus' spirit. Others will say it's a beautiful metaphor. Even the Gospels disagree on the details of what happened on that first Easter morning. John says there were 2 angels. Matthew names 1. The Gospels name different characters in their resurrection narratives. Their stories remind me of trying to share childhood memories with my family of origin. You know what I'm talking about. Everyone has a different recollection of what happened, and I find myself negotiating my reality. No, that's not how it happened. It happened this way. Now, Matthew's version of the resurrection story tells it this way, as Tom shared. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary first found the empty tomb. Matthew's account is a bit theatrical. A massive earthquake initiates a descending angel from above. The angel rolls away the stone in real time. And then I don't know why this tickles me so, but after the angel rolls the stone away, he takes a seat upon it. The angel's actions scare the guards who had been commissioned to make sure that the body of Jesus would stay put. Yet the angel says nothing to these military men in power. Instead, the angel turns to the women and speaks directly to them while atop the stone. He tells them not to be afraid, that Jesus has been raised. He coaxes them to see the empty space where Jesus' body once lay. Then the angel sends these women on a mission to tell the disciples that Jesus will meet them in Galilee. They follow the direction of the angel. As they head to tell the disciples of this unbelievable, impossible news, Jesus shows up. "Greetings," Jesus declares. Both Mary Magdalene and the other Mary touch Jesus, worship him, and he reiterates what the angel had already spoken. Jesus encourages them not to be afraid and to tell the others to meet him in Galilee. Coming from a tradition that attempted to silence the voice of women in ministry and in their homes, I find great validation in the role of women in this resurrection story. As we continue to live in an unjust, patriarchal society, I love that in this story, women encounter Jesus first. Women are the ones to share the good news that Jesus is alive and well. Their voices give instructions to the disciples on how they too could meet the risen one. So there it is, the story of the resurrection. The tomb is empty, an angel is spoken, Jesus appears, the news is shared. Happy Easter. Can we get to brunch, get to our Easter gatherings and our beloved post-Easter naps? If it's such an extraordinary event, shouldn't it compel us to more? So what of Easter, anyway? The death and resurrection of Jesus does not mean much without the context surrounding Jesus' life. While society would have us believe Jesus was a white European man with blue eyes who supports the Constitution, the reality is quite the opposite. I'll let that one sit for a minute. Friends, Jesus was a person of color, a Middle Eastern, poor, Jewish peasant who constantly challenged the empire, challenged the government status quo, its oppressive system. The Gospels tell us that Jesus fed those who were hungry. He didn't direct them to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and work harder for a day's worth of food. He fed them, and he asked others to do the same. Jesus provided healing for the sick without copays or deductibles. Jesus used his voice to advocate for those who were voiceless, the marginalized, the overlooked in his society. He sought to make all people and all things well. Jesus' way, his radical, compassionate way of life, gained popularity. Thus, crowds searched him out, evidenced by the welcome he received on Palm Sunday as people shouted, "Save us, save us." He truly was a revolutionary who advocated dignity for all. Yet, as we've seen over and over throughout history, those who speak for the marginalized, those who call for equity, for peace, for inclusion, they often lose their livelihoods, or worse yet, they lose their actual lives at the hands of the powers that be. And the Son of God was no exception. The Roman government would not have it If they could squash Jesus, they could squash his radical ideology right along with him. So this biblical narrative, this story that Jesus rose from the dead, tells the world that not even a violent death can squash the radical ideology of Christ. The resurrection demonstrates that the empire does not have the final say. The resurrection story testifies to the reality that the powers that be cannot bury the work of the divine, because God will reemerge again and again and again. Yet the resurrection story doesn't end with an empty tomb. The text tells us that Jesus does indeed appear to his followers in Galilee, in the very place where his ministry began, and atop a mountain, no less. In this encounter, Jesus shares with his followers what we often call the Great Commission. In short, Jesus calls his followers to continue his work on earth. It's in this calling, this commissioning to continue the work of Christ, that I find the most compelling and beautiful part of the Easter story. Jesus calls his followers to be an Easter people, a people who practice resurrection by following the subversive way of Christ. Clarence Jordan, one of the founders of Koinonia Farms, an intentionally integrated community of faith established in the 1940s, said this about the resurrection. The proof that God raised Jesus from the dead is not the empty tomb, but the full hearts of his transformed disciples. The crowning evidence that he lives is not a vacant grave, but a spirit-filled fellowship, not a rolled-away stone, but a carried-away church. Friends, we are invited to participate in the resurrecting work of Christ here and now. We are commissioned to embody the radical compassion of Christ and continue his revolutionary work today. Easter is more than an annual dress up for church and take a family photo Sunday, though we will be taking our family photo. The resurrection was not a one-time event. The work of Easter continues every single time we embody the life of Jesus Christ. Christ is risen when we share what we have to feed those who are hungry. Christ is risen when those who are ill receive the health care they so desperately need. Christ is risen when we choose the path of nonviolence. Christ is risen when we offer shelter to those without a place to call home, when we strive to create safe and affordable housing for all. Christ is risen when we work to dismantle racism in our communities and in ourselves. Christ is alive in the world. He is risen indeed. Amen. We're so glad that you listened to the message today. If you're looking for an open and affirming, peace-loving, and justice-seeking congregation, consider visiting us for in-person worship on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. We'd love to meet you.